You're now watching the Mike Missanelli Podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, very special guest on the Mike Missanelli Podcast today as we're at the NBA Finals beginning tonight as the Mavericks are in Boston for Game 1. A man who covers the NBA. I look at this guy. He's the most versatile guy in media right now. The guy has 7 jobs, does every one of them well. If you listen to NBA Sirius radio, you'll know that Frank Isola is the host of it with Brian Scalabrine on the starting lineup. He also does Nets pregame and postgame. He does that Four Corners show, which is what's that called? I don't even know what that's called, but the Four Corners, and then you get PTI. The man works every single minute of every single day. He's Frank Isola. Frank, how are you?
I'm good. You know, if we were doing this the old way via phone, I could lie and say that I'm at the TD Garden. Instead, I have to tell you that I'm in my hotel room. So,
well, normally our interviews are conducted with people in a hotel room. Very rarely do we have them on site. So it's not anything unusual. But you are in Boston, and you're in a hotel room, and tonight you'll be doing a pregame show. You've just finished your show, so we really appreciate you coming on. I know it's a long, arduous day for you. At 6 o'clock, you'll be on NBA Radio, Sirius Radio, with the pregame show of the finals tonight. So let's talk about the finals, because you do a show with a man who's a Boston Celtic guy. And he's already picked the Celtics. I think Dallas is going to make this a series. How do you see it?
Oh, I definitely think so, too. I mean, you do have Luka Doncic, who you can make the case is the best player in the series. I think there's going to be a game where I think Luka is going to flirt with 50 points. Now, whether or not they win that game, that's another story. But, you know, it's kind of like baseball. When you get down to, like, the playoffs, you need 2 guys. In the NBA, you know, you need really 2 guys to carry you. And that's what Dallas has done with both Luka and Kyrie, and their role players have played well. And let's face it, too, there's a lot more pressure on the Boston Celtics. There'll be pressure on the head coach, Joe Mazzulla. There'll be pressure on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, especially since they lost in the finals the last time they were here 2 years ago. They had the best record in the NBA during the regular season. They cruised through the playoffs, caught some breaks, a lot of guys hurt. So Dallas is actually in a pretty good position. I still tend to side with Boston. I just think they're deeper. I think they have enough defenders to throw at both Luka and Kyrie. That's why I would give them a bit of an edge.
It's interesting that you speak about Luka. This podcast is sponsored by BetRivers, so we have a lot of lines on tonight's game. And I know you don't dabble in that, but I'm wondering how you feel about a line that's been posted for tonight. Luka, points and assists over 40.5 is minus 120. Is that a good bet?
I think it is. You know, like you look at what Kyrie has, what Luka has done. He's been playing at a different level. The ball is constantly in his hands. I mean, he's probably going to have 4 assists or 5 assists just on lob passes at the rim to either Daniel Gafford or Derek Lively. And remember another thing, he hasn't played in a while now, so he's gotten some rest. If you go back to the Oklahoma City Game 1, you could tell that he was hurting. They lost that game, and everyone was ready to write off Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks. So I think this extra rest is going to help him. I think he's going to be raring to go. I think he's going to have a really – now, whether or not they win, that's another story. I get a feeling he's going to have a big night.
By the way, I didn't mean to demean your Four Corners show. It's called Around the Horn.
Thank you.
With
they might change it to Four Corners.
It's one of my favorite shows that I've never watched. So, in any event,
you know what? It's funny when you think about it. Have there ever been a Philly writer on the show? I don't think there have been.
No, Philly. No, never been a Philly writer on the show because it's all your little clan. It's all your little clan of old, tired sports writers on that show.
Hang on a second. There were no New. I think I was the first New York guy to be on it. In fact, when they asked me to do it, I said they call Aaron Solomon's the producer, and he asked me if I would be interested in coming on to do a show. And I said, you don't want me. He said, how come? I said, because you guys are anti-New York. It's basically a Boston-based television show. I said that to kind of bust his chops a little bit, but I was the first New Yorker. But you're right, no Philly. You guys would be too hardcore. I don't think they can handle it.
It's mostly Boston and Chicago guys that they have on there.
Yeah, L.A.
There's nobody in this city that's hardcore anymore. Those days are all gone.
Yeah, you're kind of right.
Let's talk about the dynamic here with Kyrie. You guys, the reason why I bring your show up, I love it. I can never miss it. It's like you are a recreation of me in a lot of ways, where you just you're miserable, but you don't show like you'll pull away from your misery sometimes, but you have this sarcastic look at everything, and so you'll attack little things that I would attack, like Kyrie Irving's ridiculousness in the old days, to the point where you created the Kyrie wheel of excuses. Now explain to the people what that is.
I think it was the Kyrie wheel of misfortune, because Scalabrine had said, Brian Scalabrine, who I do the show with, had said that, like, you never know with Kyrie. He's just going to wake up in the morning. He's just going to focus on one thing that'll bother him or will impact him playing. And whether it, was injury or a Zoom call with a politician and all this like crazy stuff. So we had a lot of fun at Kyrie's expense. And it's funny too, because Mike, you know the way the media works. Now that Kyrie's playing well, and the way it usually works in the media, if a guy's playing well, you praise him. You get all these people now saying, yeah, I'm sure you guys hate it because you guys were the ones killing Kyrie. Yeah, because he wasn't performing well. Now that he's performing well, and you know this, Mike, if you're listening to the show, we've been praising Kyrie for most of the year for the way that he's played. And to his credit, hey, he looks happy, which is important. Probably getting out of the cesspool that is New York and New Jersey probably helped him a little bit going to Dallas to get away. But he's been really good. But Kyrie, let's face it, there are certain players that you touch on just because they're lightning rods. LeBron is always going to be one. But Kyrie for us was a godsend the last few years for a lot of the crazy stuff that he said. This year, good for him, and we praise him when he plays well, but you really can't poke fun at him anymore because he's been not only, I don't know if it's on his best behavior, but he's just been focused on basketball. I think that's been good for him, and it's certainly been good for the Dallas Mavericks, and it's been bad for our radio show. I'll leave it at that.
Well, no, it's been actually good because a lot of people call in and say, see, I love those kind of calls. But the wheel of misfortune is brilliant because, give me some of his misfortunes.
Well,
just rattle off like 5 of them.
Obviously the Zoom call with the politician would be one of them. Not getting the shot, which meant that he couldn't play. Burning sage before a game against the Boston Celtics would be another one. Ghosting the team. And then, remember, he did that for a week. And then he also attended a birthday party. He was at a mass gathering when you weren't allowed to do that, which resulted in him being suspended. And then you also have injuries. So there was I think
and the world is flat. So you put these together in a wheel, like you're spinning a wheel that goes real fast. I didn't get the shot, and then the wheel slows down and lands on something. It's a brilliant concept. I love it. But I love the people. One of the reasons I like the show is because you take some calls. The other shows, frankly, don't take calls, and that's why. And you interact with them and. Like I love that part of it. So, how did you fashion this kind of a show on NBA radio? When you look at NBA radio, you got everybody. It's just like analysis of basketball. Like they don't have fun like you guys. How did you formulate that show to be different? How did you get the people at Sirius NBA radio to buy in that this is the kind of show it should be?
Yeah, and I think in the morning, a morning show tends to be a little bit more lighthearted. You have to know, people are driving to work. They want to know what happened last night. Obviously, we're going to deal with serious subjects when that comes. But the NBA is a fun league. And the players, let's face it, the vast majority of players in the NBA are good guys. But there is a goofiness to the NBA where the guys take themselves very seriously. All the silly stuff that they do, walking the catwalk when they walk into the arena. So if you can't poke fun at it, and I know this, from getting a lot of feedback from ex-NBA players who listen, they love it. Because let's face it, it's just like you kind of making fun of your kids at the stuff that they do that you didn't do, and you kind of like understand the silliness of it and you point it out. And the NBA really lends itself to that because the NBA is a drama league. So yes, certainly there is a place for breaking stuff down, but look at what happened since the conference finals. There's been all these days off. Do people really want to sit around? I mean, maybe there's like 10 AAU coaches somewhere that would love to hear Brian, break down plays and out of bounds plays and this and that. And we'll give a little of that. But you'd rather just talk about, how's the crowd going to react to Kyrie being in Boston, the pressure that's on guys. And then, of course, we've spent probably the past 5 days just talking about Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese because that's a fun story. The WNBA was smart. They're kind of embracing a lot more. I don't know if they're embracing it, but they're creating a lot of the drama that the NBA did. So for a morning show, you tell me, if you do a morning baseball show, can you really do that? Maybe you can do it for the NFL. I don't think you can do it for hockey. It just, the personalities just don't really lend itself to that kind of show.
No, you're right, and the NBA gives you a lot of fodder. But you're also like an ex-newspaper guy, and so am I. And we obviously cross paths in our careers that way. But when you're a newspaper guy, you learn to be sarcastic because you have so many ridiculous and preposterous things you observe. And so you learn to like push back at the ridiculousness of certain stuff. But with that said, the people at NBA radio look at it like you talk about all the time on your show about these meetings that they have where these suits who have never really done anything journalistically have a list of grievances that you don't do well, especially you. Now, everybody else plays along. I mean, you push back at them. So what's a meeting with the NBA suits like?
You mean the guys
NBA radio, Sirius radio suits?
Well, they're always, their big thing is, it's funny, and believe me, I'm not Howard Stern, I'm not Chris Russo, but the guys that have successful shows at Sirius kind of do it their way. They kind of want everyone to follow like a certain pattern, and they worry about, teases going to break and the way that you come back from a break. And, you and I, you've been doing it a lot longer than I have. I'm not a trained radio person. I think the one thing that guys like you and I have is, from being in the newspaper business, you kind of know what a story is. You're not afraid to call it out. So I think they've kind of come around on stuff like that. And you know how it is too, Mike. When I remember writing at the New York Daily News covering the Knicks, and people were accusing me of clickbait, and I had no idea what that even meant. I'm just writing a story. They think that, well, first of all, I'm trying, when people say you're just trying to sell newspapers, yes, that's right. I don't work in the refrigeration. I'm not looking to sell you a refrigerator or a car. So I'm trying to come up with a good story, but I know you the same way that I am. We're not doing hot takes. We're giving our honest opinion about stuff. I don't go to work and thinking, you know what, I could get the audience going if I take this side. I don't do that. So
we call what we see.
Exactly.
Which is the most honest way you could possibly do it.
And if you look at like LeBron James is probably the guy that's been talked about probably more on everybody's show, athlete over the last 20 years. So we praise LeBron all the time. What he does is incredible, but he also says stuff where you got to kind of call him out a lot of times on his BS. You're just trying to be honest. You try to be honest with yourself, and that's being honest with the audience. And I think a lot of these guys that have been successful in radio, including yourself, people know the honesty. When you can admit you're wrong on something, but also being somewhat combative with people. And I always say it. I always tell the listeners, I'll admit when I'm wrong. I've never been wrong. I've been right about everything. That's just, you've got to poke fun at everybody.
So when they invite me into one of these meetings, we have Mike Missanelli is a man who's been in the business for a long time, but also a listener. Give me your evaluation of NBA Sirius Radio. I go, the morning show's fantastic. I wouldn't touch it. Jeff Campbell is a cartoon. Antonio Daniels, nobody has ever known anything more about basketball than Antonio Daniels ever in the history of basketball. Eddie, I don't know what to say about Eddie. Termini's a miserable. Is that enough feedback for you? I know you can't comment on that, but that would resonate, wouldn't it?
No, I think it does. And I think you also hit on it. And this is why you were good and still are good at what you do. Because you're just being yourself and you're being original. I think that's what helps NBA radio, because the three shows you mentioned, they're all kind of different in their own ways. And I'm lucky because, Scalabrini, if you offered him $1 more a day for your show, he'd leave in a heartbeat. So I've been lucky that nobody's made that offer. I mean, the guy is brutal. He's already left once before because he got offered money to do a podcast, which I knew was going to fail. He probably knew it was going to fail. Sure enough, it failed. It's just because he did it simply for the money. But it helps to have an NBA guy like that who kind of understands where I'm coming from, will push back at me. But you get the NBA player or the ex-athlete that's been retired long enough where now he's not that tight anymore with the players. And he knows that they're different because it's a generational thing, that they're different. And he's not afraid to call them out. That's what makes Brian really good.
Yeah, Brian's great. I love Brian, but Brian goes through life and you ever see one of those mascots that are filled with air that just bounce around? Like nothing can stick to him. He's like one of those guys that just bounces around. He's the happy clam who's right.
I think you're right.
He'll push back a little bit, but at the end of the day, his life is like
Mike, I asked him today because he can't do the pregame show because he's got his NBC sports stuff. But for some reason, we're going on at 6 o'clock at night. Why we need to do a 2.5 hour pregame makes no sense. So I said to him, I said, I'll be on at 6. What time are you going on the air? And he gives me, well, at 3 o'clock, I have a personal appearance at Levi's. I'm not asking you. He goes, then at 4, I got another personal appearance. I go, dude, just answer the.
He started actually at 1. I
was actually getting mad.
He gave you the itinerary from 1 o'clock, actually.
Yeah, dude, just what time? And then he said, I think 6 o'clock. So he knows when his 2 personal appearances are, but he's not exactly sure what time he has to be there for his actual job. A little weird.
What's the best is you don't suffer fools gladly like me. So you get exasperated with your producers.
I do.
You'll get exasperated with Brian because he doesn't understand something that you're actually trying to say. They're not. It's not like penetrating.
Yeah, not everyone is down.
Funniest part of the show. You get so exaperate with him.
I can attest that Mike is just like that, Frank, if
I'm
not
just
worse.
like that. I used to get so exasperated. I'm making a clear point here. Just like, don't let me go have to explain this. Like, what do you not understand about it?
He's not always that clear, though, Frank. Let's be honest.
Yeah, we had a big blow up, or people got really mad at me because he was going to tell the Rajon Rondo, Ray Allen story about boxing. So I said, who won the story? He's like, well, nobody really won. Who won it? He wouldn't tell me. Then he's like, well, here's how the day started. I got up. I'm like, and I got mad. I go, dude, just tell. And then I'm not going to tell it now. I'm not going to tell it.
Then he got offended and he shut down on you, which is a little babyish, but it was classic, right? It's like, oh my God, these guys are amazing.
And then, I got a lot of people on Twitter, which, as you know, is the real world, were absolutely destroying me that I wouldn't let him finish the story. So the next day, I apologized to him and he finished the story, which honestly wasn't really worth all the hullabaloo. He just should have told the stupid story.
The story really didn't
really go anywhere.
I was waiting for the big finish, but to Scalabrine, that's a big finish because he's just bouncing around life.
I know. Coaching his AAU team, doing this. Now, listen, as you know, number one, and I give any ex-athlete that does a morning show, TV or radio, I give them credit. It's just like with sports writers. Like, we have to train ourselves to get up in the morning. So I give him credit for being able to do a 7 to 10 show. Because let's face it, Mike, he wouldn't be able to do any other time. He just has too much stuff going on. So he actually wants to do 6 o'clock. He wants to do 6 to 9, not 7 to 10.
Well, first of all, let me just, we're talking to Frank Isola, who, of course, is the co-host of Brian Scalabrine, NBA Sirius Radio. The starting lineup. It's a great show. I recommend everybody listen to it. But you have a 3:30 a.m. production meeting? Are you serious?
No.
The show starts at 7 o'clock.
No. Come on, man. So here's what happened. When I was on the Knick beat, Sirius is located on 6th Avenue and 48th Street. Now, I'm lucky enough I have New York press plates. So you have a press, and it says NYP, which is good, because everyone thinks it means New York Police. Then again, maybe the last 4 years, it hasn't been so good to have that on your license plate. But that's like you can park in zones that are NYP. But so I would drive I live in New Jersey, go through the Lincoln Tunnel, which is about $15, but I'd be able to park for free right near the studio. I do the show. But while I'm covering the Knicks, I'm getting home at 12. I'm getting up by 5:30 because I got to beat the traffic to the Lincoln Tunnel. I would do the show for 3 hours, sometimes go do ESPN, then cover a Knick game, come back. It was crazy. So right before the pandemic, they gave me a device where I could do it from home. So now that I do it from home, like, I'm basically getting up at 6:30 because I am watching games at night.
Oh, so you're lying about this 3:30 production.
100%. I'll never admit to this, but Brian is sometimes like checking in at 6:55. Wait. That's actually inaccurate. He's always checking in at 6:55 like that. That's why I joke around about the pre-production meeting.
I did a radio show with Stephen A. in New York City, and that was like, sometimes it would be 5 minutes after the show came on, and nobody knew where he was. He was in some other city. They're trying to find a radio station for the broadcast. So I'm aware of that kind of thing. So I just thought that was true. So that was a ruse that you get a 3:30 production meeting. All right. I get it.
Come on, Mike, you really think we're preparing 3 hours for the nonsense we talk about?
But you made it sound so realistic. I'm thinking, really? Maybe the producer has to go through. I don't know. I don't know what the rules are for a big operation like Sirius. So, all right.
Them giving me that device changed that changes your life because I'm picking up an hour of sleep every night. And over the course of 5 days, do the quick math, that's an extra 5 hours of sleep. Pretty good.
Just a couple other issues, and I'll let you go because I know you got to probably get a little nap and get to the Boston the arena. You've been very outspoken about the WNBA. You talk a lot about the WNBA, and you watch a lot of games. You're really interested in WNBA. So this Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese thing, I don't know where to ask you specifically, but just give me your overall look at what's going on with this, because it's out of control at this point.
And it's weird too, because I enjoyed watching her play last year. And I think she really took off. We just looked it up today. She had a triple. Everyone talks about, well, it really started with, Angel Reese beating her in the championship game, and then, the hand in front of the face. Everyone forgets that Caitlin Clark beat South Carolina in the semifinals and had a triple-double. I think it was like a 38-point triple-double. Maybe it was 40. But I went and watched her play this year at Maryland when she was on Iowa. I saw her first game in New York. I don't know how to explain it. I still think, I think the closest thing in the last 5, 6, 7 years was probably Zion Williamson when he was at Duke, where every game seemed to be an event. Barack Obama showed up at Duke to watch him play. It was a huge thing. It doesn't mean he was the greatest college basketball player of all time, but it was just something. It was maybe the way that he looked and how athletic he was. Whatever this girl did just resonated with people. And I think when people, especially when they go down talk about the racial part of it, yeah, she's white, and maybe that's some of it, but Breanna Stewart, Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, right at this moment, all have had better careers than Caitlin Clark, and they've all been great players. People think that Diana Taurasi and Breanna Stewart are in the so-called GOAT conversation, but they didn't resonate with the public the way Caitlin Clark did. People just like watching her play, and why it seems to be there's resentment towards her and resentment to those of us that enjoy watching her play. I don't understand it. It's good for the league that people like her. The attendance is off the charts in the games that she plays. The attention is there. And that big thing that happened last Saturday against Chicago, it's not even so much, come on, you guys watch sports. Cheap shots happen all the time. Now, Angel Reese applauding it in that moment, you don't normally see that. And then the player went home, Kennedy Carter, who's the one that delivered the cheap shot, and started taking more shots at Caitlin Clark on social media. So for all the players don't hate her, they're not jealous of her, so why did she do that? And then she even said, what does she bring to the table other than three-point shooting? All right, since you brought it up, what do you bring to the table exactly? You've been kicked off 2 teams. What are you talking about?
It's really, to me, this is really easy to explain. It's a combination of jealousy and with a racial twinge. There's no question about it that she is now being perceived as the Great White Hope, and that rankles a lot of people, especially a lot of black folks who fight every day for acceptance. I get that totally. But here's what they miss. They missed the phenomenon that she is. Like, nobody is shooting 35-foot jump shots. And the people who do, it's like, people love the long ball. Well, that's the same thing. If you're making shots from the logo, it's a phenomenon. Now, whether she was white or black, it's still going to be a phenomenon. Trae Young was a phenomenon because he was making 40-footers at Oklahoma. It's the same thing. And I don't understand how people can't look at that. That's why she's a phenomenon. Nobody else was doing that. That's like Pete Maravich was a phenomenon because of that.
And Mike, remember too, you're mentioning Trae Young. He's also playing in a league where guys play above the rim. She's playing in a league where nobody plays above the rim. So there's a lot of, with all due respect, there's a lot of plotting types of players. She's doing something that really nobody else has done before, and people enjoy it. Why? I mean, the idea that you hear from some of the ex-players and current players about you have to know the history of the league and, the other players laid the groundwork. What groundwork are you laying?
People don't look at...
Nobody's really been watching.
Anybody who watched basketball knew she was going to struggle coming in. This is a grown woman league. So, and everybody was going to go at her. They were going to test her. It's not
and you're allowed to do that.
See this happening against her. But what I thought was unusual is none of her teammates stuck up for her when she got knocked on her pins. And to me, that's why that team probably loses.
And, I sent out a tweet during the when all that was going on. All I said was the WNBA should fine the person responsible for having Indiana and Caitlin Clark play 11 games in 20 days. I said, meanwhile, for example, the Las Vegas Aces have played 6. So the pushback I was getting from people was, oh, now that your great savior isn't doing well, oh, you want to change the schedule. I mean, are people really this uneducated? If you want to
Yeah,
be a
I
serious,
think I think they are, and I really
I,
think they're just
my,
swallowed by jealousy and a
Mike,
racial angle to it.
Mike, you're not a real league. If one team is playing 11 games, another team is playing six. They did her and that team a great disservice. Listen, if everyone in the league is playing 10 or 11 games over 20 days to start the season, I get it. One team was doing that, and they were trying to milk. They were trying to squeeze the
Yeah,
juice. I mean,
but
squeeze the orange as much as they could. It ended up backfiring
listen,
on them.
I think that she probably will be a really good WNBA player, but she might
Oh,
not. But that does not dilute the phenomenon that she was at Iowa, and that's what I think people are like. They can't separate. That was a phenomenon what she did.
and
Now, if it doesn't translate to the WNBA, well, it doesn't translate to the NBA.
it'll
That's what a
trans.
seasoned basketball eye
It's
would look at.
it's gonna trans.
It probably
Nobody
will.
really.
She'll get stronger. She'll
Yes.
figure it out.
And hopefully some of her teammates will start to appreciate her a little bit more. The one thing about her at college, which is funny, you know, and this is definitely our culture. You either won or you're a loser, right? I remember I've covered two Olympics, and I was blown away when someone from some country would finish with the bronze medal, and they would be crying how happy they were that they won the bronze. We're like, you either number one or you're a loser. So they talk about her. Well, she never won. All right, hang on a second now. South Carolina has lost one game in the last 2 years. They lost to her in the national semifinals. LSU is the defending champs. This year, Caitlin Clark in Iowa knocked them out. So the last 2 years in the NCAA tournament, she went 1-1 against LSU and 1-1 against South Carolina. Yes, was it in the net? Did she lose two back-to-back national championship games? Yes, she did. But it's hard to get there. What she should have done, she should have teamed up with 10 other All-Americans and gone to UConn. And she could have won a couple of national championships, and everyone will think differently of her, I guess. It's
All
ridiculous.
right, last thing. The Bobby Hurley thing that broke, or
Danny
Danny Hurley, excuse me, Danny Hurley thing that broke. I'm thinking of Bobby because maybe he takes him along to be an assistant. But Danny, this comes out of nowhere, and it's a blockbuster. Danny Hurley would take the Los Angeles Lakers job. And the only thing I could figure is I look at the salaries of NBA coaches. They would have to pay him $20 million a year. And I'm sure that's what they're talking about with him. And maybe that's why he's interested. He has said already that he is interested in coaching in the NBA. If they're offering him $20 million, why wouldn't he go? Now, I know Brian says it's not a good job to take, but at that point, if you want to coach in the NBA and they're going to make it worth your while, why would you not do it?
Yeah, all right, a couple of things. I don't know about the money because, they always say that the Lakers did pay Phil Jackson, but they normally don't pay head coaches. He's a East Coast guy. I understand it's the Laker job. I get it. But do you notice how just 2 days ago, Gino Auriemma signed an extension? And then out of nowhere, here comes this story about Danny Hurley. I think things being equal, I think he'd rather stay at UConn than eventually get an NBA job because I don't know. I mean, you're in the Western Conference. How many more years is LeBron going to be there? Is going to be playing at a high level? So to me, I think for the Lakers it makes sense. I don't think for Danny Hurley it makes sense.
No, but first of all, I don't think that it makes sense for the Lakers because Danny Hurley can't be the coach he is at UConn in the NBA.
That's fair.
He just can't possibly be, right? But I look at Steve Kerr he just signed a contract. He gets 17 and a half. The Lakers can't pay him less than that. Maybe this is what they're preparing this colossal offer that he can't turn down. That would have to be $20 million a year.
But the Lakers, I don't know if the Lakers are going to do that. That hasn't been.
Then they're not going to get him. They have to tease him with something. Listen, we're going to make you the highest paid coach in the NBA. That's got to be part of the offer and the pitch to him.
And don't you think though? Let's play it out that he ends up not taking the job. Don't you think he's going to be coaching in the NBA within 3 years? It's almost like a trial.
And I'd tell you what's going to happen here. UConn's going to give him another contract to stay.
But Mike, here's the crazy. So here's a bit of the backstory. Last June, he signed an extension. All right, so he won the national championship. He won one this year. They were preparing to offer him another one, and apparently they were kind of dragging their feet a little bit, and he's a little ticked off about that. And again, it just so happens that Gino Auriemma, who coaches the women's team, of course, just got an extension. So that it all has to factor. It doesn't mean he's going to leave, but it's just a crazy coincidence the way this whole thing has gone down.
It really is. And at the end of the day, UConn's going to pump it. I don't know how much he makes there now, but they're going to double it. for him to stay.
Who paid? But who? It's amazing with these colleges. You pay all this money in tuition, and that's a state school. So I would think that him and Gino Auriemma, and maybe the football coach, why they have football there is beyond me, are the highest paid state employees. So you're paying all this crazy money in tuition, and it's going to pay the basketball coaches and the football coach. It's insane. It's insane. It really is.
Yeah,
go to plumbing school. Forget about going to college.
The situation at Penn State with James Franklin. They gave him $8 million a year to stay there. So, that's my school.
That's your guy. That's right.
Yeah. Frank, always a pleasure, man. Rest up, and we'll be looking forward to your pregame show where you'll probably have some interviews going on. Is Scalabrine actually going to join the show? Do you nail that down?
At some point he is. After he takes about 25 selfies from his
25 selfies. He's got probably 20 cameos today, and probably has some storefront where he's got to sign Brian Scalabrine jerseys.
You know the story. So with Cameo, he makes more money a year on Cameo than any former or current player does because he puts in the time. That's hard. It's a little hard to believe.
I do Cameo too. I get like $30.
How many you do a week?
I don't do as many Scalabrine.
Yeah.
Just maybe a couple. But what's Scalabrine's price on Cameo, do you think? For each shout out he gives. What's his price?
You think it's between maybe 70 and 100?
It's got to be more than that.
Do you know that, I guess these, big time celebrities do it now, too?
He probably gets close to, he probably gets $500 a pop.
No, you think?
Oh, yes. Yes.
How much do you think how much do you think Cameron Brink could get for those?
She probably gets she's probably 100 or above.
You ready for the number? You want to know?
Yep.
Yeah. You got it?
500.
Who? 500 for Scal?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I told. That's what I guessed. There you go. Add those up.
Yeah. That's 500 a video. I'm looking at it right now.
Go. I told you. My price is $59.99 for crying out loud.
I'm in the wrong business. I got as much personality as him.
You're right about that.
When your producer talks when he's not supposed to talk, you have that problem where they blurt in. All right.
I got you the info, didn't I?
Yeah, Frank.
Darren looks like he could kick your ass. My producer can't beat me up. So
Darren's a little older, younger than me.
Yeah.
He probably could kick my ass.
I could.
All right, Frank, have a good time.
All right, boys. I'll see you guys.